I didn't catch her cheating. I caught her being careful. The first thing I noticed wasn't the messages. It was the way she'd renamed the contact. No heart, no inside joke, no nickname that would make someone smile if it popped up on the kitchen counter. Just a clean first name. A name that could belong to anyone. A name meant to disappear into the noise of daily life. I was standing in the hallway with the shared tablet in my hands, the kind we'd bought for the family, which really meant it bounced between homework, recipes, and the occasional movie night when we were too tired to negotiate. That night I'd opened it for something boring, an emailed receipt, maybe, or the calendar. I wasn't hunting. I wasn't even suspicious in the way people describe after the fact. I was just moving through my life. And then the notification banner slid down like it had no idea it was about to split my world in two. Can you talk tonight? Just 5 minutes. I miss how quiet it feels with you. My wife's name wasn't on it. Mine wasn't either. It was a message from someone to someone else. Except it landed here, in my hands, in my house, in the hour when the lights were low and the rest of the family was already asleep. I should have put it down. I should have told myself it was a mistake, or an app glitch, or any of the harmless explanations that allow a person to keep living. Instead, I tapped the banner, because curiosity is a weak word for what it really was. It was my body recognizing a pattern before my brain could offer excuses. The thread opened. No explicit photos, no crude language, no obvious confession, just warmth, consistency, a steady drip of closeness that didn't belong to me. Did you eat today? You sound tired. Don't let him push you past your limit. I like hearing you laugh. I forget what that sounds like sometimes. You're safe with me. Safe. I reread that word until it blurred. My wife and I used to talk like that years ago, when we were still learning each other's edges. We'd built our marriage around the idea that home was where you could finally exhale. We weren't perfect, but we were solid. Or at least that's what I believed. The contact name sat there at the top of the screen, plain as a paper label. Evan. My throat tightened before the name fully registered, like my body was trying to spare me the recognition. Evan wasn't a coworker. Evan wasn't a cousin. Evan wasn't some distant friend from her past. Evan was my daughter's fiancé. I felt an irrational, desperate urge to laugh, like my mind wanted to treat it as a misunderstanding that would evaporate if I shook it hard enough. My daughter, Mia, had brought Evan into our lives slowly at first, as if she was introducing a skittish animal to a new home. He'd been polite in the way that makes parents relax. He asked questions. He looked me in the eye. He offered to carry things without being asked. He called my wife ma'am once early on and got teased for it, blushing like he'd been caught trying too hard. I had liked him. I had told Mia that I liked him. I'd felt oddly proud the first time he asked me to go for a walk with him, just the two of us, as if he was studying the role he wanted to step into. I'd interpreted it as respect. Now I stared at the thread and realized respect can be performed. The house was quiet in that specific way it gets after midnight, when even the refrigerator seems to hum softer. I could hear the faint tick of the hallway clock. I could hear my own breath, uneven, like I'd run upstairs. I was suddenly aware of how small my hands felt around the tablet, as if the object itself was too ordinary to be holding something this heavy. I scrolled higher. Older messages. It had been going on for weeks, maybe longer. There were gaps, days where the conversation went silent, then resumed with a comfort that suggested the silence wasn't absence, it was time spent elsewhere. There were references I didn't understand at first. That place with the good tea, your car was warm, I still smell your shampoo. Small details, domestic details, the kind that don't come from imagination. I could have marched into my bedroom right then. I could have shaken my wife awake and demanded an explanation while the evidence was still glowing in my hands. But something stopped me, something I'm not proud of. But I'm not going to pretend it wasn't real. Fear, not of her anger, not of being wrong. Fear of what would happen to Mia if I spoke too soon. Fear that my daughter's future might collapse in a single night because of a conversation I forced while I was still shaking. So I did what a lot of people do when the truth shows up uninvited. I started collecting it in silence. The next morning, I acted normal. I made coffee. I rinsed my mug too thoroughly. I said good morning to my wife, Lena, like my voice belonged to the same man it had belonged to yesterday. She kissed my cheek as she passed, quick and casual, and I tried not to flinch. Her hair smelled like her usual shampoo. That detail didn't comfort me the way it used to. It only connected dots I didn't want connected. Lena moved through the kitchen like everything was fine. She hummed under her breath while she packed Mia a leftover container, even though Mia didn't live with us anymore. She did it anyway because she liked being needed. That's what I'd always told myself, that her caretaking was love. Then her phone lit up on the counter. She didn't grab it immediately. She glanced at it, a fast, practiced look, and slid it face down with a motion so smooth it could have been reflex. She smiled at me as if nothing had happened. "Big day," she said lightly. "Mia's coming by after work. She wants to talk wedding stuff." I managed a nod. "Yeah, that's exciting." My wife's eyes held mine a beat too long, as if she was checking whether exciting sounded true. Then she turned back to the sink and started rinsing dishes that were already clean. All day at work, the thread burned in the back of my mind. I replayed every family dinner, every holiday photo, every moment Evan had sat in our living room, with his knees angled toward my wife, as if his body knew where it wanted to be. I remembered how Lena laughed at his jokes a little louder than necessary, how she sometimes touched his arm when she spoke, the way some people do without thinking, except now I couldn't tell what was thoughtless and what was deliberate. That evening, Mia showed up with a folder under her arm, cheeks pink from cold air, eyes bright with that hopeful energy that makes you want to protect a person from anything that might harden them. She spread swatches and venue photos across the table like she was laying out a future she believed was safe. "Okay," she said, grinning. "Don't panic, but we picked a date." Lena froze for half a second, just a slip in her rhythm, then recovered with a bright, eager smile. "Already?" Mia nodded, practically glowing. "And Evan has something he wants to ask you both. He said it's important." I looked up, and that's when I saw Lena's hand tighten around her water glass. Not enough for Mia to notice. Not enough for anyone but me. But it was there. A small crack in the mask. And in that moment, with my daughter smiling between us and my wife trying a little too hard to look delighted, I understood something that made my stomach drop. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. It was about to step into the light. Evan arrived 20 minutes late, which Mia forgave instantly, because that's the kind of person she is. She treats delays like weather, not character. He came in with that familiar, respectful energy, shoulders slightly forward, as if he was always ready to help, always ready to prove he belonged. "Sorry," he said, breath still a little quick, like he'd jogged from the car. Traffic was worse than I thought. Lena's face brightened in a way that used to make me feel lucky. Now it made me feel studied. She crossed the kitchen to take his coat like it was the most natural thing in the world, her fingers brushing his sleeve for a fraction too long. "It's fine," she said. "You made it." Mia didn't notice. Or maybe she didn't want to. She was already spreading her folder open again, pages sliding out, venues, budgets, a list of caterers she'd researched like this was an exam she planned to ace. She was so alive with it that I felt guilty for even breathing wrong. We sat around the table like a normal family. That was the strangest part. The world didn't tilt. No thunder. No cinematic moment where the truth announces itself. It just sat there with us, invisible, while Mia talked about flowers and guest lists. Evan cleared his throat. "There is something I wanted to ask you both." Mia's eyes lit up. "See? I told you." He looked at Lena first, not me. Lena's smile held, but her posture shifted, subtle like she'd braced for a gust of wind. "I want to do this right," Evan said. "I know traditions aren't everything, but I respect them, and I respect you. So I wanted to ask, would you be okay if I called you, Dad, after we're married? I don't want to assume, I want you to know I'm serious." Mia made a small sound like she might cry. Her hand covered her mouth. Lena's eyes softened instantly, and she reached across the table for Evan's hand, squeezing like he'd just offered her something sacred. "Oh, Evan," she said warmly. That's beautiful." My chest tightened so hard it felt like my ribs were part of a vice. The word dad hung in the air like a joke someone else was laughing at. I forced my face into the shape of pride. "That's kind of you," I said carefully. "And yes, if that's how you feel, then yes." Evan exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. "Just thank you." Mia reached for him, tangling her fingers with his, and for a second, I saw them as they were supposed to be. Two young people building a life, unaware of the rot hidden in the beams. The conversation moved on. Cake tasting, seating charts, whether Mia wanted a small ceremony or something bigger. Lena kept making little suggestions that sounded supportive, but every time Evan spoke, she reacted too quickly, laughing before the punchline arrived, nodding as if she already knew what he would say. At one point, Mia got up to grab her laptop from the car. Evan offered to go, but Lena shook her head. "No," she said. "Let her. She's excited. Let her have her moment." Evan watched Mia leave through the window. The door clicked shut. The house shifted. It was subtle, but I felt it, like the room had exhaled something it had been holding. Evan glanced at his phone. Lena looked at him. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Fast, practiced, private. Then Lena stood. "I should check the oven," she said, though nothing was in it. Evan followed her with his gaze, then looked down at his hands like he'd suddenly remembered he was sitting at my table. I sat there, my palms flat against my knees under the table, willing myself not to shake. I kept thinking, this is my daughter's life. One wrong move and I become the earthquake. Mia came back in, cheeks flushed from the cold, and the normal noise returned. She didn't notice the tiny distance Lena put between herself and Evan now, like someone resetting a room after a spill. Later, after Mia and Evan left, Mia hugging Lena tightly, Evan giving me that firm handshake I used to respect. I watched their taillights disappear down the street. Lena stood beside me at the window. "Sweet night," she said softly. I didn't answer right away. My silence stretched long enough that she turned her head. "You okay?" she asked. The same words she'd asked me the day before, the same careful tone, like she was measuring my temperature without touching me. "I'm tired," I said. "Weddings bring up a lot." She nodded too quickly. "Sure, of course." Then she did something she hadn't done in years. She reached for my hand. Her fingers threaded through mine with a tenderness that would have melted me once. Now it felt like a performance staged for an audience of two, one of whom had already seen the script. That night, after she fell asleep, I sat in the living room with the tablet again. I told myself I was doing it for clarity, for confirmation, for a way to stop imagining. The thread was still there, but now the newest messages were gone, not deleted from the app, wiped from the top like they'd never happened. My pulse thudded in my ears. I searched. I refreshed. Nothing. Then I checked the trash folder. Empty. A cold realization settled over me. She wasn't just hiding something. She was maintaining it. Like a garden you water, prune, keep alive. I set the tablet down and stared at the dark screen, my reflection faint in the glass. I thought of Lena's hand in mine. I thought of Evan asking to call me Dad. I thought of my daughter's smile. And then, in the quiet, Lena's phone lit up on the nightstand upstairs. I saw the pale glow spill under the bedroom door like a signal. I waited, listening, counting the seconds. Then the mattress creaked. Soft footsteps, and the unmistakable whisper of a drawer opening. I stood up so fast my knees knocked the coffee table. My heart hammered as I moved toward the stairs, every step feeling like I was walking into a decision I couldn't undo. Halfway up, I heard her voice, low, controlled, speaking into the phone. "I can't talk long," she murmured. "He's awake." I froze on the steps, my hand gripping the railing so hard it hurt. The house felt smaller than it had ever felt, like the walls were leaning in to hear. And then she said the name. Quiet, intimate, unmistakable. "Evan, listen to me." My stomach dropped as if the stairs had disappeared beneath my feet. I didn't move on the stairs. I didn't breathe. I learned, in that moment, how still a person can become when motion would turn suspicion into certainty. "He's right downstairs," Lena whispered into the phone. "You can't... No, listen to me. You have to stop texting on the shared devices. I told you that." A pause. I imagined Evan on the other end, somewhere quiet, somewhere he felt entitled to speak freely. The image of him sitting alone with his phone, face lit from below, made my jaw clench. "I know," Lena said softly. "I know it's hard. It's hard for me too. Hard. Not wrong, not dangerous, not devastating. Hard. I'm not saying this doesn't matter," she continued. "It matters more than you realize. But you can't rush me. You can't rush this." Another pause. Her voice lowered further, smoothing into something intimate, practiced. "You're not a mistake." The words landed like a bruise I didn't feel until seconds later. My fingers dug into the banister. I could feel my pulse in my throat, loud enough that I was sure she'd hear it. "I just need time," she said. "For Mia. For him. For everything." I backed down the stairs as quietly as I could, each step an exercise in control. When I reached the living room, I sat on the edge of the couch and pressed my palms together until the shaking slowed. Above me, I heard the drawer close. Footsteps. The soft return of a body to bed. When Lena came downstairs a few minutes later, she looked unsurprised to see me awake. "You okay?" she asked again, as if the question itself could reset the night. "Couldn't sleep," I said. She nodded, careful. "Me neither." She sat beside me, leaving just enough space to suggest respect. Her knee brushed mine, accidental maybe. She didn't move it away. "I worry about Mia," she said, eyes on the dark window. "She's so hopeful." I stared at the reflection of our faces in the glass. "You always do." Lena sighed, a sound designed to invite sympathy. "This wedding, it's a lot. Big transitions make people act strangely." "Do they?" I asked. She turned to me then, searching. "What are you asking?" I held her gaze. I wanted to ask everything. I wanted to say his name out loud and watch her flinch. I wanted to protect my daughter and burn the lie down in the same breath. Instead, I said, "Do you think honesty ever comes too late?" She looked away first. "I think," she said carefully, "that timing matters." I nodded as if that made sense, as if it didn't terrify me. The next day, I did something I never imagined I would do. I called my sister. Claire has always been the person I go to when I don't trust my own reactions. She lives 2 states away, has no stake in our daily life, and has known Lena long enough to love her without being blind to her. I asked if she could talk. She said yes without asking why. I didn't give details at first. I told her I was worried about the wedding, that something felt off, that I felt like I was standing on a fault line no one else could see. She listened quietly, the way she always does. Then she said, "You're being careful with your words. That usually means you already know." I swallowed. I know something. I don't know everything. "What are you afraid of losing?" she asked. "My daughter," I said immediately. "And yourself?" she added. That question landed harder than the others. I told her about the messages, not the whole content, just enough. I told her who Evan was. I told her what I'd heard on the stairs. There was a long silence on the line. "Oh," Claire said finally. Not shocked, just steady. "Okay." "Okay?" I repeated, a little stunned. "It means you're not imagining it," she said, "and it means you need to slow down." "Slow down?" My voice cracked despite my effort. "Claire, my wife is—" "I know," she interrupted gently, "and your instinct will be to protect Mia by keeping quiet. But silence has a cost too. It always does." "What am I supposed to do?" I asked. "If I confront Lena, she'll deny it or twist it. If I tell Mia without proof, I become the villain who ruined her engagement." "You don't need to blow anything up today," Claire said. "But you do need clarity, and you can't get that alone." I leaned back against the counter, staring at the wall. Who else could I possibly involve? There was a pause, a careful one. "Evan," she said. The word made my stomach turn. "No," I said immediately. "Absolutely not." "You don't have to accuse him," Claire replied. "You don't even have to reveal what you know, but you can observe how he responds to pressure. Ask him about boundaries, about commitment, about honesty." "You want me to sit across from him and pretend this is normal?" I asked. "I want you to see who he is when you're not watching him from the dark," she said. "Because right now, he's controlling the narrative. And so is Lena." I hated that she was right. 2 days later, Evan texted me. "Hey, would you want to grab coffee sometime this week? Just the 2 of us. I'd like to talk." My chest tightened. I stared at the message, the timing too precise to be coincidence. "Sure," I typed back. "Tomorrow morning?" "Perfect," he replied. "There's a place near my office." The cafe was bright, full of morning noise and neutral territory. Evan arrived early. He stood when he saw me, nervous energy visible in the way he adjusted his jacket. "Thanks for meeting me," he said. "Of course," I replied. "You said you wanted to talk." He nodded, took a breath. I just wanted you to know how serious I am about Mia, about the marriage. I don't take it lightly. I studied his face. He looked sincere. That was the problem. Can I ask you something? I said. Anything. How do you define loyalty? I asked. Not just in marriage, in family. Evan blinked, thrown off. He smiled faintly. Loyalty is showing up, being there when it matters. And when it doesn't, I pressed. When no one's watching? His smile tightened. I think, he said slowly, that people make mistakes. What matters is intention. I leaned forward. And secrecy? His fingers curled around his coffee cup. Sometimes privacy is necessary. For who? I asked. He hesitated. That hesitation told me more than any confession could. As we stood to leave, Evan looked at me with something like fear behind his eyes. I hope, he said carefully, that you trust me. I held his gaze. Trust, I said, isn't a feeling. It's a pattern. That night I sat alone in the car outside my house longer than necessary, watching the lights in the windows. I realized then that the truth wasn't hiding anymore. It was waiting. And whoever spoke first was going to break something that could never be repaired the same way again. The next week felt like living in a house where every surface had been wiped down too thoroughly. Everything looked normal, but nothing felt safe to touch. Lena became better. That was the most confusing part. She cooked dinner 3 nights in a row. She asked about my day with an attentiveness I hadn't felt in months. She even laughed at something I said, a real laugh, the kind that used to make me relax into myself. It was like watching someone rebuild a stage while pretending the play hadn't already been running. And Evan went quiet. No more eager texts to Mia about venues. No more quick replies in the group chat. When Mia called him, he answered in short bursts, voice flat, like he was reading his own lines off a card. He's stressed, Mia said one night, twisting a strand of hair around her finger the way she always did when she was trying to convince herself. Work is intense. He says he's just tired. Lena nodded too quickly. Poor thing. He puts a lot on himself. I watched her say poor thing like she had the right. That night, after Lena went upstairs, I stayed on the couch and listened to the house settle. The heating clicked. The refrigerator hummed. The quiet felt like pressure building in a sealed container. My phone buzzed. A message from Evan. Can we talk? Not at the cafe? Somewhere private. My throat tightened. I stared at the screen, reading it again like the words might rearrange into something harmless. Somewhere private. As if my whole life hadn't already been invaded by his privacy. I didn't answer right away. I walked to the kitchen, poured water I didn't drink, then came back and sat down. Tomorrow, noon, park by the river, I typed. His reply came immediately. Thank you. I'm scared. Scared. Not ashamed. Not sorry. Scared. The next day, I told Lena I was running errands. I kept my tone casual, like I wasn't stepping into the most loaded conversation of my life. She didn't ask questions. She didn't offer to come. She just smiled and said, "Drive safe," like she knew exactly where I was going. At the park, Evan was already there, sitting on a bench facing the water. He looked different in daylight, paler, smaller. Like the confidence he wore at my table didn't survive outside the walls of my home. He stood when he saw me, hands shoved into his pockets. "Thank you for coming," he said. I didn't sit. I stayed standing, keeping the bench between us like a boundary. "You said you wanted to talk," I replied. He swallowed. His eyes flicked to my face, then away. like he couldn't hold my gaze long enough to lie comfortably. "I don't want to hurt Mia," he said quickly. "That's why I asked you here. I don't want to ruin her life." My jaw tightened. "Then you should have thought about that earlier." He flinched, the first real sign that the mask was cracking. "I didn't plan it," he said. "I didn't go looking for anything." I waited. Silence can be a tool when you don't fill it with mercy. Evan exhaled shakily. "It started as conversations. Your wife, she was there, always there. Whenever I was overwhelmed, whenever I felt like I didn't deserve Mia, she'd talk me down. She'd tell me I was good, that I was steady, that I was the kind of man she wished." He stopped himself. I felt something cold move through my chest, like an internal door closing. "She wished what?" I asked softly. Evan's eyes filled with panic. "I shouldn't have said that. I'm not trying to—" "No," I said. "Finish." He stared at the river as if it could rescue him. "She said she wished you saw her, the way I saw her." I laughed once, quietly, because my body needed some kind of release, and laughter was safer than what wanted to come out instead. "So you saw her," I said, "and that justified it." "No," he said, shaking his head too fast. "No, nothing justifies it. I know that. I do, You just wanted something that wasn't yours," I said. He looked at me then, desperate. "I'm trying to end it." That sentence hit me with a strange kind of whiplash. "You're trying to end it?" "Yes," he said, breath quickening. "That's why everything's been weird. I told her we had to stop. I told her Mia she deserves the truth. She deserves a clean life." My fingers curled. "And what did Lena say to that?" Evan hesitated. In that hesitation, I felt the outline of my wife's power, the way she could steer a room without raising her voice. "She said," Evan swallowed, "she said you wouldn't survive it, that it would destroy you, that it would destroy Mia, that sometimes loving someone means protecting them from what they can't handle." I stared at him, the words ringing in my head like a bell struck too hard. Protecting, handling, destroy. She'd reduced all of us, me, Mia, to fragile objects that existed to justify her choices. "What do you want from me?" I asked. Evan's shoulders sagged. "I want you to tell me what to do." The audacity of it almost stole my breath. This young man, my future son-in-law, was asking me to manage the wreckage he'd helped create, as if I were still the responsible adult in a room where no one else wanted to be one. "I want to confess," he said quickly. "To Mia, I do. But I'm scared she'll hate me. I'm scared she'll hate herself for not seeing it. I'm scared." "You should be," I said, and my voice came out calmer than I felt. "Because whatever you say, you don't get to control how she breaks." Evan squeezed his eyes shut like he'd been slapped. "I'm not asking you to cover for me," he whispered. "I'm asking you to help me not ruin her." I finally sat, not because I softened, but because my legs felt like they'd been holding me upright through pure will. "Listen," I said, "if you're serious about ending it, then you end it. Completely. No calls, no private talks, no closure. You stop feeding it." He nodded fast. "I will." "And then," I continued, "you give Mia the truth." Evan went still. "You're telling me to confess." "I'm telling you she deserves to live in reality," I said. "Not in a story the two of you wrote behind her back." He stared at his hands, trembling. "She'll leave me." "Maybe," I said. "And that will be the consequence of what you chose." Evan's voice cracked. "And you? What are you going to do?" That question sat between us like a blade. Because the answer wasn't just about me and Lena. It was about whether I was willing to be the man who shattered my daughter's happiness to save her from a worse shattering later. I looked at Evan and realized something with sudden clarity. He was not in control. He never had been. Lena had been managing this from the beginning, watering it, shaping it, pruning it, and now, as it started to die, she was already preparing to blame someone else for the mess. "I'm going to talk to my wife," I said. Evan's eyes widened. "Today?" "Yes," I said, and my voice finally shook. "Today, because the longer this stays hidden, the more it becomes part of Mia's foundation, and I won't let my daughter build a life on rot." Evan whispered my name like a warning, like a plea, but I was already standing. When I got home, the house looked the same as always. Lena's shoes by the door, a clean counter, a family photo on the wall. Mia between us, smiling, Evan's arm around her shoulder. Lena was in the kitchen, stirring something on the stove like nothing in the world could touch her. She glanced up and smiled. "You're back early." I stared at her, feeling the full weight of the choice in my chest. "Yeah," I said. "We need to talk." Her smile didn't drop, not immediately, but her hand tightened around the spoon, and in that tiny, involuntary grip, I saw it. She already knew. I didn't confront Lena that night, or the next. What I did instead was something quieter, and in some ways, crueler. A month before everything unraveled, I had already made the purchases. The Tesla Model X arrived on a Tuesday, white paint catching the sun like a promise. Lena cried when she saw it in the driveway. Real tears. She hugged me hard and kept saying she didn't deserve it. I told her she did. I meant it then. 2 weeks after that, I flew her to Miami Beach under the pretense of a reset. I showed her the house myself. Glass, light, a short walk from the water. I told her it was ours, a fresh chapter. She stood barefoot on the tile, hand over her mouth, stunned, silent in a way I mistook for gratitude. Now I understand what it really was, guilt. When I finally spoke, it wasn't with anger. It was with clarity. I told her I knew. I told her how long. I told her I'd heard her voice on the stairs. I told her about Evan's confession, his fear, his willingness to end it too late. She didn't deny it. She didn't fight. She sat on the edge of the bed in that Miami house and stared at the ocean like it could erase timelines. "I never meant to hurt you," she said. "I know," I replied. "How you just accepted it." The divorce was quiet. So was the end of the engagement. Mia didn't scream. She didn't collapse. She went still, then distant. That hurt more than rage ever could. Lena kept the Tesla. I kept the silence. The house in Miami Beach went on the market 6 months later. Some gifts are love. Some are apologies you give before you're caught. I learned the difference too late, but not late enough to let my daughter inherit the lie.